What's up, everybody? Welcome to another episode where I get to sit down with more incredible humans and get to know the person behind the athlete. On today's episode, I'm sitting down with two guests, one of them well known in the CrossFit space as she has been standing on the podium at the CrossFit Games on a team 4 consecutive years. It is Lena Richter. And then a athlete in the rugby space, I'm also catching up with Lena Neumann. She is one of the most successful female rugby players in Wales. These two ladies get to dive deeper with me into the matter of women in sports. What was it like growing up as a super competitive athletic female? What are some of the conversations that they've been able to have throughout the years that has led them to have so much success? And what are some of the topics and conversations that we still need to be having in order to get more eyes on women's sports and have more financial backing? So without any further ado, let's welcome in these two ladies. Thank you both for being here. We are going to have a fun discussion, but it's not just three lovely ladies. We have a fourth. Lena, who do we have here?
This is Amelia. Oh, you're smiling. You're even smiling to them. Hi.
Oh my goodness. She's perfect. Is this her first podcast YouTube recording debut?
It is. Say hi. Oh, okay.
Oh, but she's already looking right into the camera. She knows what to do.
She knows what to do. Hi. You can look at me.
Lena, it's so great to catch up with you. And Lisa, it's great to have you because we have some crossover. I recently started covering women's rugby, and you are nonetheless a very well-known rugby player over in Wales. So thanks for joining us today as well.
Thank you for having me.
So let's start with, what have both of you been up to? Obviously, Lena, I know you're holding your almost newborn. So maybe Lisa, where are you in your season? What are you preparing for? What's kind of on the docket right now with rugby?
So we've basically come off probably our biggest tournament, which was the World Cup. And it was in England this year, which was probably really special. Well, it was actually really special because obviously it meant not a home World Cup. Obviously, I'm Welsh. So it's not home World Cup, but it's pretty close. And yeah, we've just completed that. So we're actually in our pre-season, essentially in season for our in our PWR, which is our club rugby. But essentially the coming off the World Cup, it finished for us about 4 weeks ago, which was pretty cool.
Did you notice this year any changes or differences? Because I know, of course, and kind of the bigger overarching topic today is women in sports, is there's been this great push specifically in rugby. Could you feel that? Could you see that? What was the vibe from your experience, growing up with the sport to seeing it this year?
It was actually incredible. So I was fortunate enough to go to the last World Cup, which was in 2021, 2022. And the amount of spectators that came was so much more. I mean, there were the media around it, the support, people watching it on TV, coming to the games itself, even if they weren't necessarily the big headliners, let's say. The amount of people who support was insane, and you could really feel that. And England were obviously in the final, and there were just under 82,000 people there, which is almost double or even double than the last World Cup, which was England versus New Zealand. So it's just grown immensely. And the build-up has been incredible, especially for teams like England. They obviously won the World Cup, but I know a couple of the girls who are there, they're in the same club as me, and they honestly said they were so overwhelmed by the amount of support they had. They'd come off the bus into the final, and they were delayed because there was so many fans there. It was something they'd never experienced before. So even to get that at a women's rugby World Cup is incredible. There was a big drive and a big push to make it a big one, but to actually for them to actually feel it and experience it, it was out of this world for them. So yeah, it's definitely improving. It's definitely getting a lot bigger. So that's amazing.
It is interesting though to hear that they're experiencing this fandom for the first time, because they didn't just overnight become professional athletes and end up on the biggest stage for a rugby competition. So to hear that this was the first time they were experiencing, the autographs, the pictures, I think is a super interesting point.
Yeah, so I think that's obviously been building a lot over the last couple of years. So there's a lot of support in that sense. I think it's this year just by how many people were there to watch women's sport. Tickets were sold out way before people had expected. They had to release more tickets, and that just to be basically a sellout is like you would never have thought years ago that a women's rugby game would have had a filled out stadium, competing at the same level as men. Um, People would only dream of that. And obviously my team didn't get to experience that as such because we obviously didn't do as well in the World Cup itself. But to be able to watch it and to be part of it from that sense is just amazing. It's women's sport, something that we obviously all do, and for us to see that people are experiencing that, and people want to come to the games, whether they're rugby fans or they're fans of individuals within the team. People are talking about it, promoting it, and it's just incredible.
Yeah, and we'll come back to more of that topic in a moment. But Lena, I know you're just returning back to training. What has that process been like for you?
Different and like more difficult and also easier than I thought. It's been fun. Baby is 2 months now, so yeah, it's hard coming back from. Oh yeah, really hard. Hard coming back from childbirth. And things and like your body's not what it used to. Obviously, I think that's crazy to think, but it's so individual too. You know, um, it's definitely an individual path, but I also see a lot more females doing it, which is really cool. And there's a lot of more research on it actually, which is super cool. Yeah, I don't know. My brain just died right now. I was so interested in. I wanted to ask you, Lisa, about the World Cup.
Mhm.
Is it solely like female World Cup? It's not the same
Yeah.
time as the man. Is only for the females.
Yeah, so it's basically set aside, so it's its own
That is really cool.
game
Because we in CrossFit we always do it like at the same time. Like a
together.
competition would be the same, just males and females going at the same time. And sometimes you can see, um, more audience
Mhm.
for, let's say there's a really popular male athlete or a really popular female athlete. The audience will come and go during that time. But like we never just have a female competition or just male.
So
That's really cool
yeah,
actually.
so the World Cup's obviously every 4 years, but there's like championships or um tournaments in the lead up to that. So in the rugby union, you have a Six Nations, and then you have like an autumn's internationals autumn tour. So it used to be a couple of years ago, they used to align at the similar time, but
Mhm.
with that, it's women's sort of popularity and audience and just people the game or even watching on TV, it struggled because they overlap too much. So if there were two games going ahead at the same time,
Mhm.
obviously with men, there's so many more people sort of supporting that. So the likelihood was that people weren't able to support the women's game as much. So eventually it transitioned away from that. So it would be its own tournament within it. So it happened 2 months later, and it would create more opportunities for women.
Yeah.
So I guess that's been a benefit from that. But I guess it's different in competitions. You have teams. You compete. You can have mixed teams. You can compete rather than just competing with females. Right?
Yeah. I see. That's interesting. Oh, my baby's
She
like,
has some input to the topic.
she loves talking.
No.
Oh, I love it.
Are you getting shouted out?
Do the men and women support each other, like the athletes in that situation, since they're not competing on the same weekend or at the same tournament? Like, do you get athletes support? Has that ever been a thing?
Yes, it's you see it in its different right. Like some international men would come and support the internationals. So a lot of the time, either there's individuals in the same club, so men and women. So you might, for example, I play for Harlequins, so there may be some internationals within that team, and they may go support England, for example. So it's not necessarily like a lot of the time when it does happen, it gets put on TV a lot because it's obviously such a great thing to have these amazing athletes that obviously in. It does happen. I wouldn't say it's massive. Like there are individuals that do it, and it's going in the right direction where people are supporting. Even the World Cup, the amount of support that the men, the women was incredible. So, it's getting a lot big. It's getting a lot bigger.
Mm. Lena, what do you think that would be like in CrossFit if they had like a specific big competition that 1 month it was all women and 1 month it was all men? Do you think
I
that
know,
that would
thinking
work?
the same. I feel like that would create like a bigger difference in the sport too. Like then it would be maybe more, they could be like, oh, but we have more people watching in female or men, and then they give more prize to whichever gender they have more audience at, you know. But the way we do it now, you can't really tell, you know,
Yeah.
which
I think that's the beauty in it, though. Like it's probably very beneficial. But I guess maybe it's seen more as an even playing field, whereas I think we're not quite there in the rugby space yet.
no.
We're quite a lot behind the men, I guess. So it's sort of like I tried to explain this before, but it almost you kind of want to see women's rugby in its own identity in comparison to the men. Like the games are so similar, but we almost want to create it as them being completely different because the women's game's going more towards like people's brands, people's personalities, people's character.
Mhm.
And you get touches and glimpses of that within the men's rugby, but it's just completely they're just completely different in that, if that makes
I
sense.
see. Also, like when your games are so much longer, like within CrossFit, it's easier to do like back to back,
True.
like a short workout that's just 15 minutes, and then the 15 minutes of the women's. Like it's easier to have them all in the same setting, or even when we have longer endurance events, they just go all together, you know. Um, so that's something that you can have a field and just put everyone out there, you know. That's for you guys.
Yeah, no, yeah, no, of
Rugby, like
course.
there's just like two teams that can play at a time.
Yeah.
Mhm.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Do
And
you
it takes
think?
how long? Like a 90-minute or closer to
Pardon?
2 hours for a game? How long?
80.
80.
80 minutes, yeah, split into two halves, comparing two different like high level sports, and it's just so different in the women's and men's game. Like in CrossFit, obviously, like you said, you're not compared, as in it's men and women getting two different sort of benefits and opportunities. It's sort of seen as the same, which is obviously incredible, which is what you want, I guess.
Yeah, I think so. But also, as Lauren said, like it would be interesting to see like what would happen with the sport if we did differentiate it. But then we also have the part of the sport which I've mainly been in. It's the team one, and there's two females and two males. Like we compete together. There's no, like both parts are equally important on the team.
You
Um,
could look at Wadapalooza though, where their team format is the 3 women
yeah.
or 3 men on separate ones. So I guess, and maybe that'll be an interesting study to do at Wadapalooza, like looking at the stands. is there like, is it more popular to watch the men teams or the women teams? And I think for that specifically, it comes down to like personalities and what like super teams have you built together, maybe is what adds the fanfare, as opposed to like a specific gender is more interesting.
No, for sure. And of course, the like you said, like you have the fan aspect of growing a sport, like how many is watching and all that, but then also how many are we including outside of that particular event? Like how many are we in the CrossFit gym, or like in the general rugby played by sport, you know, as kids, or I don't know, in high school, college, whatever. How many female males are we, you know, having into the sport that's not on the big stage too? Like I think if we were to separate females and males sport, could we include more females into the sport outside of the competition? You know where I'm going, Lauren? Like, would it
Yeah,
look interesting? Would it look cooler as a female thing if it was purely like female competitions, female CrossFit competitions? Could we include more females outside of that?
like would it encourage more participation if they
Yeah,
knew that they were just going to be among other women and not
yeah,
playing the sports with men as well?
yeah, maybe. Or like it wouldn't be. I think sometimes females in CrossFit are so like, you look like men, you know? And we compete alongside, right, like with men. And obviously I'm not saying that's how I look at it, but could it look more like empowerment, like powerful for women if it was a single female competition? I think they have
Mhm.
one of that in Italy. They have a female competition, no? Bella, Bella something. I seen
Okay.
what's her name? Ah, I know,
Mom brain.
Felix.
Sorry, who?
Like her
Oh,
Instagram tag is Felix.
yeah, yeah, yeah,
That is
yeah. I'll
Lena.
have to look at I haven't seen her post it, but
I think she's
Elisa
been at something.
Fuliano.
Yeah,
Yeah.
completely female competitions.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Maybe I'll just pick her brain and see kind of what she thinks. But even kind of going back to that and that thought of or that way of thinking, what role did sports play for both of you growing up? Was it very much like you're with the boys and the girls? Was it separate in like leagues or what have you, or just in general, what role did it play for both of you? Lisa, you can go ahead and start.
So I was super sporty growing up. Like I did basically every sport. I never really channeled all my abilities into one. I just did everything, and I tended to play, like growing up as a child with boys because I did like football, I did rugby, and those sorts of games or sports. Sorry, I think it was strange because when I got into secondary school, there was almost like a separation. So it was like the primary school in school, it was like the boys' games or boys' sports and the female sports. There was not necessarily like integration as such. So it wasn't going into rugby essentially. There wasn't necessarily that much support and participation in the sport as a whole, which meant that being able to sort of succeed and develop in that area was actually tough because there weren't many clubs there. Clubs would always fold. The participation wasn't there. So it just wasn't necessarily that popular as such to go into sports that were commonly more male dominant sports. So it's now there's more sort of development into pathways to get to elite levels. um, so now, if you're 16, 14 years old wanting to get into a sport, the pathways that are there are so much better. There's obviously now there's more females doing the sport, so you're looking up and having female role models, whereas when I was growing up, people asked me who my female role models were, and just didn't have any because there wasn't necessarily that much media attention around certain individuals. And it was just a lot harder to sort of feel inspired to achieve in that sport, if that makes sense. Like it would never, like people ask me, how are you an international rugby player? Because I started when I was 23. I didn't really do it that much growing up, and I had zero role models. I never thought I could do it as a career. It was almost just, I'm sporty, I enjoy it, I'll do it. I do it alongside my work, and then eventually I got to a position where they ended up offering contracts, and I thought, yeah, I'll take a pay cut. I'll leave my job. Didn't enjoy it that much. Don't really like working in an office. I'll try it, and then I kind of sort of ended up here. Whereas, like the trajectory wasn't as straightforward necessarily, whereas people coming into the game now can see, wow, by the time I'm 18 I could be paid for this, whereas that wasn't the case for us. So weirdly kind of just fell into it.
I feel the same with CrossFit. Like I started CrossFit when I was 20. Yeah, 19, 20.
Yeah.
And just did it because it's yeah, I was a sporty girl. It's fun. It's like everything that I like to do, like being strong and challenging my body and all that. And then suddenly just rolled on into, this is my life now. This is my job, you know? Um, but yeah, that's, I think growing up I had gymnastics or I had gymnastics, and so I played soccer. But gymnastics is where I had like Sean Johnson. You know who that is?
Oh yeah.
You do. That was my like role model. But not never in the sense of like, that's gonna be me. Just like, wow, this crazy out of this world athlete in gymnastics. And it's so fun. She's doing CrossFit now. Like
Mhm.
yeah, no, that's um I don't know. It's, but in CrossFit I never had like that. I had Kristin Holte, like that I eventually also trained with, which I think that sparked the reality of like, oh, I can also do this.
Mm.
You know, I think when you have people that are really good, that in the same, like you're either into their same path or you're doing the same path as they once did. Like younger people now in Wales can see like, okay, I can do the same steps as Lisa does, you know? And that's how I felt with Kristen. I started working out in her gym and I see what she actually does. And I'm like, oh, okay, this isn't too far from what I'm doing, you know?
Mhm.
And she would help me if I came into the gym and I'm like, oh, I haven't slept. And she's like, okay, why? She would just like, okay, you just have to start doing it. In my head, it was like, okay, I have to be an athlete to like athletes sleep well and athletes prioritize this. But I wasn't doing it. And she was
Mhm.
just, you just have to start. You just have to start doing it. Just start sleeping better. Just start, you know, always prioritizing your training, and then eventually it's going to build on. So I think that's amazing to have them close to and see that it's possible. Same
Mhm.
same with me as being a mom. Like I thought I had to give up my career to be a mom, and then because you only see Tia, Claire Toomey, or you see Annie, or you know these Kara Saunders, like they're so big names, and I don't know what they're doing in their training. I don't know how they live their lives. And then suddenly when I see it myself closer up from people I know, like Kristen again, and my teammate Ingrid Hotnemir, and I saw people I were competing with at SoCal, was it last year? And there were so many moms, and I'm like, oh, they haven't given up. Like they're not retired. They all have like their little 5 year olds on the sideline rooting for them. Like that's what I want to have, you know?
Yeah.
There's no like, yeah, I can still be competing and I just bring them along, and that's actually makes it even cooler, you know? That's something I want to bring into my family too. That's part of the values and what we do as a family. Um, but again, it's I needed it closer to see that this is something I can do too.
I think you almost get more inspired or motivated by the people around you in the circles with it, like around you, though, because a lot of the times, like big names do these like inspirational um
Mhm.
achievements, having a baby or looking at how their path goes towards a certain tournament and stuff. Whereas it's not actually until it's a lot closer to you, you're like, okay, that actually seems achievable, because
Yeah.
it almost seems a bit more relatable because they're within your like circle network area.
Yeah, exactly.
Did you start, I know obviously you started when you were 19, 20 doing CrossFit. When did it sort of become like a professional thing for you?
So, and wait, I must think. 2019, that's 6 years ago. Yeah,
Okay, well,
2019. I think that's when I remember I was like, okay, I am an athlete. Like I started telling that to myself, and I felt like I finally could use that as an excuse for, birthday parties. I could be like, I'm not
wow.
drinking because I'm an athlete, because
Yeah,
before
yeah.
that it's hard to like justify all the sacrifices that you do, because it is a lot. It takes a lot being an athlete. So I guess 2019 it started, and then 2021 I had my first games.
You didn't think that that was even possible. Like you can actually
No,
call yourself a full-time athlete, and now a mother and a full-time athlete. Like that's incredible.
exactly. Yeah, no, that is crazy.
But I think if you were to both ask yourself when you were a young child doing these sports just for fun because you both had this passion for sport, could either of you have seen the trajectory to where you both are now?
No,
No, no chance. I
I mean, I
almost
would
get
dream of
curious.
it. I'm sorry, I would dream of it. There's always this wild dream of like being a world champion in something. But that's like, no, just a wild, wild dream.
I think for me, it never seemed possible. Like it when like even this is so silly, but when I first started actually getting paid for sport, like my grandparents, obviously it's very different generationally, but they'd
Yeah.
always say to me, "When are you going to get a real job?" And I'm like, "No, this
Mm.
is my job now, and I'm doing something I enjoy. I've always been sporty, so why can't I get paid for it?" And it was always the thing, like, "But you're just doing sport." And they
Mhm.
never really understood that it was where a career could go, and I didn't at the time as well think that it was even possible. And I almost get a little bit envious now of people coming into the game now from a young age, because I just think, wow, like your progression is going to be amazing. Like if you want to be the top of your game, if you want to become an international Olympian, whatever that might be, you have so many role models out there who have shown you that it's possible. You've got the facilities, the opportunities. It's dedicate your time towards. Whereas when I fit out, it's almost like it's a glorified hobby. You're not getting paid. You're just doing it for enjoyment. And there wasn't necessarily that drive or an incentive to not necessarily become an international, but just actually just be paid for it, to be able to do that full time. You just would never have thought it was possible.
Like, I agree with you, but I think having the opportunity to grow your hobby and like really the love for what you're doing, like you love it because you're not getting paid. Like this isn't something you're doing because you have to. It's purely something you're doing because it's fun, and then you're getting paid. Imagine this was your let's say you're doing, I don't know, studying for finances, or you becoming a doctor. Let's say doctor, because it takes a long time. I think a lot of people who become a doctor don't love it, right? They do it because it's something that looks good on paper. It's possible they can do this, like I have the abilities, whatever, and they set out on this path that's super long that they might not even enjoy, right? They study for a decade or whatever, becoming a doctor, and then they don't even love it. And I think
Yeah.
right now there's some, even in CrossFit too, that set out on this path of becoming a CrossFit athlete because it's possible. They're strong. They're, they have all these qualities and they can, and, it's going to be their job. And they work and they train so hard day in, day out, and they don't love it. And then they also don't see like the result they want at the end. Like that's hard to watch. If you really love it, of course, that's amazing. But knowing that you really loved it before you got paid makes it it makes it better.
Even
also,
sweeter.
right? Yeah.
Yeah, it's easier to do, I guess.
Yeah.
Well, it's interesting. I was having a conversation a couple weeks ago with a friend, and he was telling me that, his dream was always to play professional football. He was going to be in the NFL. Like, that was the dream and the goal since like he was a child. And then I got thinking, wow, I was super sporty. I loved sports. I played almost all of them growing up, but never in my mind did I think, oh, when I grow up, I want to be a professional athlete. And then I started to think, I wonder if this is a like normal way of thinking that men or young boys grow up thinking they want to be professional athletes because they see it as attainable, where young girls think, no, I'm going to grow up and I'm going to be a nurse or a vet or a teacher. And maybe that's just like the generation that I grew up in, but I'm curious if either of you thought that like being a professional athlete where you could get paid was truly possible.
I think within my sport it wasn't, like not for me, and it took us a while to even become professional. We became professional 3 years ago, which is still very new. And I guess I mean, football went professional way before that, and they're getting the same pay as men. But I guess it's sports specific. I guess rugby specifically, I wouldn't have said. You would have never looked at. I think because when I was watching rugby, they weren't getting paid.
Yeah.
So it wasn't like a situation where you think that's a job. Like, it was always just that is just a hobby. And now that it is a job, it's just you can just see that it's changing massively with how it's being supported by the unions. People are putting money into it.
Do you remember, like, you grew up playing football, you grew up playing rugby when you were young, it was very much like mixed with men or boys and girls. Then eventually it was separated once you got to, middle school, high school. Do you remember like a time or the point where it did start to dawn on you that men's sports and women's sports were going to be different and they were treated different, whether it was a lack of pay, a lack of media, the things that we've really seen up until this point?
So it's interesting. So the financial differences between men and women have obviously been, so different. And that goes along with ticket sales and people wanting to invest in the game, whether that's on TV, coming to come into the games and things like that. So we've known there's always been a difference there, and obviously people we want to close the gap between that. But I think financials aside, because it obviously depends which union you play for. England have been professional for a lot longer than loads of the other teams, and they are just worlds apart. But I think it's sort of in the last 2 years or so where I've sort of noticed that actually for a long time we've wanted to be treated like the men, particularly in terms of finances, or not necessarily the exact same, just a bit more respected, I guess, in that sense. But I think over the years, or the last 2 years, there's sort of been a movement away from, okay, we don't need to be seen like the men, like we're playing the same sport, but the game is seen kind of differently. You have people coming to games because they are obsessed with the person who's playing, not necessarily because of what they're doing. Some players like Ellie Kildun, she's an English rugby player, and she's exceptional. She's one World Player of the Year. She has so much flair and excitement. People go to the England Games because they want to see what she does. And then you have the other extremes, like a Lena Richter, who's come from sevens, come into the PWR, which is the tournament over here, and you have this like burst of or influx of people coming to club games, coming to international games because of who she is as a person. So a lot of people aren't necessarily just coming for the rugby, but they're coming because they're so inspired by this athlete who's, she has like formidable strength. She's there to empower women. She's, her slogan, beauty brains, beast beauty brains, like everyone's inspired by who she is, not necessarily because of what she's doing on a rugby pitch. And not to say that she's not an athlete and she's not doing amazing things on the field, because if you see her play, you're like, wow, okay, you don't really want to come up against her. But what you're noticing is people are coming to the games because of who she is as a person. People are inspired by her, and I think that's the way the women's game is going a little bit. It's like people are proper fans. Like, people are obsessed with certain individuals. They're buying merch because one of the players are doing cowgirl celebrations, and then that's going sort of in that direction. And there was a recent thing in Wales where there's one of the girls in our team, she essentially trolled online because she likes to wear big bows and she likes to make herself look pretty, and she got a lot of abuse by it. And it came out in the media, and she put out a statement basically saying, like, I'm a woman, but people can play of all shapes and sizes, all different sort of ways they want to express themselves. And within the World Cup, the amount of people that supported her by wearing bows on their wrists, in their hair, it was insane. Like, I've never seen anything like it. You had the stadium full of people wearing bows, and people are coming to support women's personalities and not necessarily just women's rugby, if that makes sense. So how you see men and women's sport, there's like a difference, I think, which is really fun to see, because it's entertaining, not just from a rugby perspective, but also because you have these like fun personalities coming out, allowing women to be whoever they want. You can express yourself in any capacity you want, and it's sort of encouraged, if that makes sense.
Do you think that will actually help? Like, I know that right now, women in sports and getting more eyes specifically on women's rugby is something that has been breaking the headlines really since, like you said, Lena Richter has been basically America's sweetheart in a lot of ways. Do you think that it'll help the trajectory of not just rugby, but women in sports if there is that deeper connection with the athletes and getting to know like who that athlete is on social media, and whether it's the bows, whether it's, being strong, but also feminine? Like, do you think that there's more buy-in from a sports fan to be watching for those reasons?
Yeah, absolutely. I think that's the way it's going. Like, people want to see rugby, sure, but it's so much more fun when you know someone's personality behind the athlete, like the player. And I think it's more entertaining for other people. They feel almost more inspired. They feel like more connected to the individual rather than just the team itself. So I think allowing people to express their personalities and their differences is far more empowering than just them being either a professional athlete or really strong. Like, I feel like fans feel more connected to the individuals, which will obviously increase the popularity of the sport, but it'll bring so many more people to the game because people see those personality quirks or the differences, and like girls will look up to the women and like, okay, I'm big like her, but also she expresses herself in this way. Or you have people wearing makeup, and before it was like, why are girls even wearing makeup to play sport? And it's like, well, actually you have these people who are expressing that. So obviously people have been doing it for a long time, but now people are sharing their story of they want to wear lipstick when they play, or they want to have a full face of makeup and feel strong and feel pretty and beautiful, and that's okay. So it's like almost encouraging people or creating a space where a lot of people can get invested into that sport because of, okay, you don't just have to have this masculine energy and you have to be big and strong and that makes you a rugby player. It's not. You can be powerful, beautiful, and all these other things, and you can still be a professional athlete. So I think it's far more empowering
Mhm.
in that sense.
It's interesting, and I hear you. I think also because rugby is a team sport, like it's hard to connect with a team because you don't like you are not a team. You are not 15 people, right? So like how can you connect with that? And you need strong personalities within the team, or you need like a strong connection to tradition, like you have with soccer in Europe or even football in US, like people like a certain team because their family's always done it, or like this is my college team, or like you have to connect somehow. And I think that what we're seeing in female team sports now, that single individuals are doing stuff like that to like to create connection, you know, like make it, you want to know these people somehow. So, and that's something very relatable, you know, wanting to look pretty, or maybe not wanting, like not wanting to look pretty, but just like, okay, I'm big and I'm strong and I'm sporty, and even just showing that is something relatable. If you want to wear makeup, or if you don't, if you want to wear a bow or you're not, but you're expressing it so that people have the chance to relate and the chance to connect.
Yeah. Then for you, Lena, when you were looking to start a family and bring this beautiful little daughter into the world, you know, you also have these big CrossFit dreams, goals. I mean, yeah, you've stood on the podium 4 times with teams, and that's amazing, but you even spoke that you want to get back into it. Did you think that there was a possibility when you were done having kids or when you were done having your child that you could get back into competitive CrossFit? And if you thought it was possible, like where did that mindset come from? And if you didn't, where did that come from?
I at first just didn't think it was, just not that I didn't think it was possible, I just thought the norm was to be done competing, you know. You reach, you know, in your 30s, you just, the norm is you're not competing anymore. But then the later years we see people that are 30 plus, especially even if in female sports, I think, um, that are still good, they're still really competitive. So I'm like, okay, I don't want to stop competing when I'm 30 because I still have a lot of years left. I see other people have that, and I also want kids. So I during pregnancy, I knew I wanted to come back. I were very intentional with, okay, I want to have a baby, but then I want to keep competing, and I know it's possible, and I believe I can do it, and yeah, I believe I can be a mom and still be in the older age range of competing and be competitive. So I don't know if that answered your question.
Yeah, well, because I think we talk about it now, and at least specifically in the CrossFit space, there are so many incredible role models who
Mhm.
we've seen do it. There's Tia, there's Ariel, there's Annie, there's Cara. I mean, the list goes on of high level elite athletes who have had kids and been able to come back. But I'm just curious, like, who was the first one that thought it was possible and tried? And because as you said, you know, each pregnancy is so individualized and it's going to be so different for each mother. Like, what are some of those conversations that are going on in your head to keep you going and reassuring yourself that it's not over. Your competitive side is not over just because you decide to have a family.
I think just like you said, seeing those people that you mentioned, seeing them, and I don't I don't know. I just have high expectations for myself, you know, and that's one of the higher expectations that I think I can manage. And I think for me it was also seeing the average person in the gym, you know, not just these really really high athletes, but average people in the gym have babies. They like work
Yeah,
out their whole pregnancy and they come back. Like, yeah, it might take a year, but I was also thinking there's a lot of injuries in sport that takes longer than a year, you know,
true.
and you
Oh,
expect them to come back. You know, if you tear your ACL, you're not expecting them the next season. You know, maybe they're competing next season, but not at the level they were before the injury. So it's kind of the same I'm expecting for a pregnancy too. Like, yeah, it's gonna take me a year, and it's probably a way more fulfilling and, you know, like fun year than being injured for a year. Like, that's,
Much more fun.
yeah.
agreed. Because all you
But yes
challenge
and
you
no.
back as well, like knowing that you have given birth and your goal is you to come back. You know, it's way more fulfilling to see yourself at the other end of it, having achieved that and going through what you have. And then obviously, like you said, your body's changing. At the start, it might not be able to do what it used to be able to do, and it's like knowing that things like that take time, and then you're building your strength up again and again to be in the position where you were pre-baby, but now you've got a beautiful daughter, so it's almost way more fulfilling.
Yeah, I think so. And I right now I'm like in the between of like recovery and training is going really well. I also need to be there for her. So I want to be a mom, and I think I'm doing great being a mom, but I also really want to work out and come back. So I can't go all in on the training like I did before as an athlete. I can't 100% focus on sleep and recovery and all, like having 6 hours in the gym is just not going to happen right now. But I can be in between for a while, and hopefully, like, it's going to take longer time than it did before, but it's also so much muscle memory. Like, you're not losing all your skills and your muscles and everything because you have a pregnancy. um it's just going to take a little bit longer, but I'm definitely think I can be back, and I will be back.
Yes, you will. We can't wait to see it. We know she's got the fight in her. And I think that both of you both have very unique perspective to the conversation when we talk about, you know, women in sports and women empowerment. But from each of your personal perspectives or even your individual experiences, what would you say has been the most challenging thing about competing like as women, or even like what are some of the misconceptions that you hear people talking about or see a headline in the media and you're like, oh, it's totally not like that?
I think the biggest thing for me was it was always assumed once we went professional, you would get the success straight away. You've suddenly gone from just not being paid to being paid, and suddenly you need to be winning championships and games and things like that. And I think obviously it's been 3 years now, but there's been a lot of change within our team, within the structure, having different coaches like every year. And I think one of the hardest challenges has been being able to show people what you can do and getting the results, even though to everyone it looks like, oh, you're professional, you're getting paid. But then there's so many, I guess, hidden challenges behind that. Like a lot of people have jobs alongside there, even though they're full time as an athlete, they have jobs alongside it to help supplement their income. Some people, are traveling 4 or 5 hours to training, and then getting a hotel overnight. So it looks like, I guess, the setup is professional, but when you look deeper into it, there's a lot of work that needs to be done match other professional teams in nutrition, in recovery, in not having people train when they have 4 hours sleep because they have to commute that far to be able to play. So I think that's been really challenging. That okay, now we're getting paid, sure, but there's so many challenges within the setup as a whole that I guess people don't necessarily see. I think so. I think that's been quite tough. Obviously, a blessing to be able to say you're a full-time athlete, but it's still really hard day to day, week to week, if that makes sense. Like you find it amazing because you're doing what you love, but the amount of, again, obviously sacrifices you still make, which you would have to make, like you mentioned, if you don't want to drink, you can because you're a full-time athlete, and you don't have to kind of feel guilty for it because you're a full-time athlete. But I guess like even the sleep sacrifice or the extra money you're paying just to be able to still get to your training or to help you eat enough on the go. It's like there's so many things that I think make it really difficult still, even though you're a full-time athlete. I just don't think it's where it's at yet. And I know the women's game is growing in that direction, but yeah, financially it's not the best in the world either. There's a few teams that obviously get that luxury and they are supported, but I think in terms of competing against other teams, you're not just competing against the other team that's professional, you're competing against a team who gets fully cooked meals 4 times a week. They're looked after for 4 nights, whereas other teams are driving 4 hours and have to cook their own meals and get a takeaway. Do you know what I mean? So, some people get supported a lot more financially, they get sponsors or, things like that. So I think there's like nuances between teams and individuals, which I think on the surface you're like, wow, full-time athlete, look, it's going to be amazing. But actually there's so much more challenge within that I guess people don't see because it's not necessarily something that's particularly spoken about or made aware because of the way the women's game has gone, I guess, if that makes sense.
There's such a big range within full-time athlete. I also say I'm a full-time athlete. It doesn't mean I have to like do other small stuff, or like it doesn't mean I'm just like getting this awesome payment and like it's so glorified sometimes. And yeah, like headlines might show that, oh, there's full-time athletes, or you're getting paid, you're having a contract. It doesn't mean it's easy at all. Like you have so much sacrifices being an athlete, no matter the sport, I think. And it's a small percent that has it easy, or yeah. And no, sport isn't easy either way.
No, I know what you're saying.
Yeah.
The more opportunities or more accessibility to things that can make the day-to-day things not as challenging. Obviously, like the work behind sport is going to be hard, right?
Yeah.
Hard things, but even as Lisa was saying, like the commute, not having to do meal prep, like all of that takes time and energy. And somebody once told me, this is probably not like the best analogy, but you only have so many bullets in your chamber, you as a person, to fire off for the day.
Yeah.
And if you use them all by meal prepping, by driving and doing the commute, then what's left for you once you get to the gym and need to put in the work or you need to be on the pitch for a match? Like you only have so many.
Yeah. No, that's true.
What do you think still needs to be done? Because I mean, most of this conversation, we are acknowledging that there have been strides made to get more eyes on women's sport and women in general, like growing up and having more accessibility to, playing football if you're a little girl and maybe you're not going to be teased because it's more common or what have you. But what still needs to be done? What are the things that aren't being talked about yet that will actually move the needle?
For me, and like the phase I'm going through now, where I know, and talking about my pregnancy when I was pregnant with other athletes, I'm like, this is great. Like, do you want to have kids? And they're like, yeah, but I'm gonna be done first. And for me, I think breaking that myth. I know you said little girls, but I think we
This works
see,
too.
yeah, no, like for females, there's such a stigma around when you want to have a family, your sport like journey kind of stops. And just breaking that myth and seeing that we can support women who wants to have families, who wants to go through a pregnancy and continue competing, and see that it's possible, not just for these few elite individuals that have everything, you know. Because it probably wasn't easy for them either. We just need to like break that myth. It's not easy, but it's definitely possible. And yeah, seeing for myself, it's hard going through pregnancy and losing sponsors, and you can be out competing and like show yourself at competitions the same way when you're not pregnant. So, and just going through that time with less support and then trying to get back, it's um definitely hard, but it's possible. And I think one way is just showing how we can do it and showing that it how the work is done. I myself, I was looking for like, how do these CrossFit athletes train during pregnancy? Like, how do they do it? How hard? How much? What can you do? And the general assumption of pregnant women being so fragile, like in general, like you can't do anything is going to harm the baby, and like all these old myths on pregnancy and postpartum. Like, you need to wait 6 weeks before even moving. That's crazy. I know that's what they usually say, and that's probably what your doctors say right now, but it's not necessarily what we see in sports. And there's a lot of studies coming through now that you can start way earlier, and it's going to help athletes. Like, telling any athlete to just don't do anything for 6 weeks, that's, or like don't work out your abs for 9 months, like that's that's not gonna make it easier to come back. We need guidelines, and we need people showing more in social media what they do, so that that path is easier. Like, we can see, okay, you're working out hard, you're doing high heart rate stuff, you're doing heavy lifts all the way through your pregnancy, is going to make it a lot easier coming back. But we need to see more of it. And I know some of, like, Tia didn't show much during her pregnancy. She just disappeared for 9 months, I think. And I tried looking, like, what did she do? How did she
Yeah,
come
yeah.
back? What she did? Nothing. Because I think a lot of the things that she did was right for her, and right for her as an athlete, but very different from what we expect women to do during pregnancy. And that's kind of why they just didn't want to get in those fights. And I get it. Me too. Every time I posted something during pregnancy, I was like, "Ugh, people are gonna hate me."
Oh my
Yeah.
god.
And I
Yeah.
posted, and I'm like, oh wow, they love it. Like, this is what they needed to see. There's so many moms or pregnant athletes who are like, oh, I needed to see this because I've been going crazy, thinking that I had to stay still for 9 months. That's no.
Yeah, the internet conversation can be hard because
Yeah.
you see a visibly pregnant elite athlete handstand walking and it's like, "Whoa, what?" Or doing a rope climb and it's almost so jarring because you're not used to seeing it, but I was talking to Paige Powers recently who gave birth and she came back and she's competing again, and an elite levels baseline is very different than a hi, I'm your average, I CrossFit 5 times a week, than what my baseline is. Uh, but yeah, I think the more that you're able to see, I think that's a great point, and see that like it is possible and there's other women doing it. I think that that can be inspiring and encourage somebody else to know that it's possible.
Yeah.
I think that's the biggest thing as well. Like, everyone always says, like, you need to see it to be it. Whether you see women in your sport doing something, whether you see people having babies and coming back, that's what inspires people to get involved in a sport or follow the same path as someone else. And I think it's everything so much harder in growing the sport, in growing the amount of people who are having babies in CrossFit and then coming back, because they're seeing it's possible, and they're seeing, even obviously you mentioned like losing sponsors and things like that. Like, why can't we change the narrative that you can be sponsored the same as other people because you have an empowering story to show that, you're able to compete at this high level, have babies, and also come back. Like, that's empowering enough to inspire other women. Like, women, not everyone wants to have a baby and give birth, but a lot of women do. Why can't that be a story that can also be shared? And you know it can also be so empowering to other people. Why can't that also be celebrated in the same sense and light as someone who doesn't have children within a sport, if that makes sense? So I think that would help change, sort of, by changing the perception, by changing the influence. That way will help support the women's game, whether that's in CrossFit, rugby. We recently, and this is very, very different because I guess it's almost for Wales, it's in its infancy, but for a long time we didn't even have a maternity policy within our contract, and that only came in a year ago. So before that, no one knew what it would be like if you were to have a baby. You could probably just leave and not have a contract and be chucked out of the team. Like, you don't know how you're going to be supported, and that's only recently come in. And one of the girls is having a baby, and she's been supported throughout the whole thing. But now individuals are seeing that someone's having a baby, she's being supported. Again, it's not perfect. Some things should be better, but at least there's a maternity policy in place to say, okay, financially she's gonna be supported. She can come back to rugby. Whereas before that, like you said, you're seeing people have babies, and it's possible that you can also come back. It's, when you say that, it's strange, because not strange, but if I take that into rugby, it's almost like, oh God, if I were to have a baby right now, would I see myself coming back? It, like, before there was no maternity policy, okay, now there is, but it's so different I don't know whether because it's a bigger team event, or whether if you're out of the team for a year, whether you're still going to be able to compete with other people within your position, I don't know. But I haven't necessarily seen that many people have babies and come back. It's coming, and there's the people within the England team. She literally had a baby, came back, went to a World Cup, and it's like, wow, to be able to see those stories is amazing, and that's going to push people to be able to think that things like that are possible. So whether you're having a baby or not, like, just being able to see the sport, being able to see all the amazing things that people are doing, will also allow you as a person to also follow that path. So I think that's going to sort of help that trajectory a little.
That's so great that they have a maternity plan, or like in your contract. That's crazy, but it's also so good, and it's definitely something that is different from women and male sport. Like, if a male want to have babies, okay, sure, just do it. Like, he can still compete and do whatever, do his whole thing as usual. He's still gonna be, after, when the baby is there, he's gonna also have sleepless nights, or like have a baby that he needs to care for and be there for, and someone else to, emotionally look after, which is things that we sometimes give females when you're a mom. It's like, oh, but now you're not 100% going to be into the sport. You're a mom. That's not your 100% priority. It's the same for a father. We just don't look at it the same way. And yeah, there's a physical aspect of this pregnancy that's also so different, and it's special for female sports, and having that into your contract is definitely something you need. And I think that's something you need there to actually have them come back. If we want more cases of people coming back to playing rugby after having a baby, it needs to be in the contract. If not, they're not going to do it. They're not going to see it's possible.
Are there any other because I think for a long time, at least growing up, talking about hormones, talking about periods, talking about childbirth, like those were all under the category that were very much taboo, especially on sports teams or, when you are still playing on sports teams with boys. Are there any other conversations or topics that either of you feel like were taboo or maybe still are taboo that you would like to get out there and have more open conversations about that would help women's sports?
For me, it's still like the pregnancy and training hard during pregnancy and training with the intention of coming back to sport, and not just like, oh, I'm retiring. Oh, seems like I'm actually fit, so I'm just gonna keep going. Because that's what I've seen a lot is females. They kind of announce their retirement, and then they're seeing that, oh, I'm actually pretty fit and I can keep going, and then they keep going. But going into a pregnancy with intention and training with intention of I'm going back, and also postpartum, like I want to see more of people intentionally, I'm training to be good again, you know.
Mm-hmm.
I guess just also, like you said, knowing that there's a way of doing it. It might be different to like every person's body type and how they're affected by certain things are different, but just knowing that enough research and support has gone into helping individuals who want to have kids and then come back, and knowing that's how you potentially need to train, or what you can do, what you can't do, like being scared, like you said, like doing a rope climb or a handstand walk, there's when you put things out on social media, like waiting for the backfire because god, you're putting your baby at risk, or things like that, like almost spreading the awareness and spreading the knowledge of what you can actually do, what's actually safe, just to like help you get back into the sport and train while you're pregnant, but also just increase the knowledge and awareness for other people, so that it's like a safe and not a taboo topic, I guess, in a sense, not frowned upon.
Yeah.
I think it is somewhat frowned upon. I
Yeah,
felt
exactly.
it being frowned upon, but then also um people love seeing it, but they're also like, you shouldn't do this, you know. There's also, yeah, like how do you do it in contact sport? How long can you train contact sport while pregnant? There's actually a lot of research going on that too.
Is there?
Hmm. there
I
there
think
is a lot. It takes time getting out there, and it takes time getting into the guidelines that are given to your doctor, and then the doctors can say it, and like it's just very different than what it was 10, 20 years ago. Like your family, your mom is going to give you different advice than what we see now is possible for women.
I guess people who, especially within rugby, like people who are doing it now, are almost like the guinea pigs who sort of set the path for other people down the line.
Yeah.
Because I guess people don't know, like there's not, I don't, that I'm aware of in our team, no one's been going through a pregnancy through international training. So it's also new for all the coaches and staff who are trying to implement training programs to keep them a certain level of fitness, but not ensure their heart rate goes too high so it puts any damage on the baby. And even that's so new, and even exploring that is, it's going to be so different in 5-10 years once more people are doing it and seeing it and having the appropriate amount of research that goes into it. It's just will make it so much easier for people to be like, I know exactly what I'm doing, I'm going to be supported, I know that in X amount of months postpartum I'm going to be fit, I'm going to be back on that stage, I'm going to be back competing. That would be
Yeah.
nice.
Yeah. And I think it's important to, of course, have grace as everybody's learning and figuring these things out. But it's equally as important to keep the foot on the gas pedal and keep pushing for these conversations, because the only way we learn is through having these conversations. And I feel so grateful to have had both of you on, because I feel like you both just added such a different perspective And the more conversations we can have with people in different sports and different upbringings, I think the better we can all be to just continue educating and push for more eyes, equal pay, and little girls growing up saying, dang it, mom, I am going to be a professional rugby player or CrossFitter or football player or whatever it is, because that's really what we want. And wearing a bow or not wearing a bow, we'll see all of it.
Love that.